I stood frozen in the doorway of my aunt's house, a warm casserole dish in my hands. The memorial gathering was in full swing, voices buzzing. My older brother Cole's voice cut through the noise, loud and sharp. "Don't worry about setting a place for Wendy," he announced to the room. "She's only here for the free food. A total waste of space, like always." A few nervous laughs trickled out. His wife, Angela, smirked into her wine glass. I felt every eye dart toward me, then quickly away. Heat flooded my cheeks. I'd spent all morning making Aunt Clara's favorite pasta bake. Now I just wanted to disappear. The heavy silence was broken by the front door opening again. A man in a flawless suit stepped inside, a briefcase in his hand. He surveyed the crowded room. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but clear. "I'm looking for the person in charge of the family affairs." All conversation died. The lawyer's presence was like a splash of cold water. Cole puffed out his chest and stepped forward immediately, a practiced smile on his face. "That would be me. Cole Henderson. I've been handling everything since my aunt's passing." He extended a hand. The lawyer shook it briefly, but his gaze drifted past Cole, landing on me still clinging to my dish in the entryway. He studied me for a moment, then looked back at Cole. "I represent the estate of Clara Henderson. There are matters requiring discretion and specific instruction." He turned his attention to me fully. "Wendy Henderson?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Could we speak privately, please?" The request, directed solely at me, hung in the air. Cole's confident smile melted into confusion, then irritation. I set the casserole dish on a side table, my hands trembling. I followed the lawyer into the quiet hallway, aware of dozens of stares burning into my back. Cole tried to follow, but the lawyer gently closed the door between us. "My name is Arthur Vance," he said, handing me a thick, cream-colored envelope. "Your aunt gave me this with strict instructions. It is for you alone, to be delivered after the reading of the preliminary will at the gathering." I took it, my name elegantly scripted on the front in Aunt Clara's handwriting. "Open it," he urged softly. Inside was a single sheet of her stationery. The message was short. "My dear Wendy, if you're reading this, trust no one except Arthur. They will fight you. Be strong. You are the only one I trust with what comes next." Before I could process it, the door flew open. Cole burst into the hallway, his face flushed. "What is this? What are you handing her?" he demanded, pointing at the envelope in my hands. "Anything regarding my aunt's estate goes through me. I'm the executor named in the old will." Arthur Vance stepped slightly between us, his posture relaxed but firm. "Mr. Henderson, the situation has evolved. According to the most recent, legally binding documentation, Wendy is the primary beneficiary and decision-maker. This letter is for her." Cole's eyes bulged. "Decision-maker? That's ridiculous. She barely visited." His voice rose, drawing relatives to peer down the hall. "Give me that envelope, Wendy. This is family business." I clutched it to my chest, Aunt Clara's words echoing. "They will fight you." "No, Cole," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It's addressed to me." Back inside, the atmosphere was tense and silent. Arthur addressed the room. "A preliminary review indicates Miss Henderson has specific duties to perform before the full estate can be settled. I will be assisting her." Murmurs erupted. Cole looked furious but stayed quiet, simmering. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door. With shaky fingers, I pulled out the rest of the envelope's contents. Beneath the note was a small, brass key taped to a card with an address, a storage unit across town. A second, longer note from Aunt Clara explained. "The truth is in Unit 47. It's time for unfinished business and family truths to see the light. Use your good heart, but be smart." I stared at the key. What truth? What unfinished business? A soft knock came at the door. It was Arthur. "Wendy," he said through the door. Do you understand the magnitude of what she has left you? It's not just possessions. The next morning, I met Arthur at the storage facility. My stomach was in knots. He used a key from his files to open the outer gate. Unit 47 was a large, climate-controlled space. When he rolled up the door, I saw stacks of plastic bins and filing boxes, neatly labeled. She brought me here a month before she passed, Arthur explained. She organized everything herself. The first box I opened was filled with financial records. Bank statements, loan documents, investment portfolios. As I flipped through, a pattern emerged. Large, regular withdrawals, often on the same day as deposits from Cole's business account. Notes in Aunt Clara's hand read loan to Cole, for business pressure or Cole's emergency. The amounts were staggering. In another box, I found older deeds and letters. And at the very bottom, a small digital voice recorder. Sitting on the concrete floor, I pressed play on the recorder. Aunt Clara's voice, frail but clear, filled the space. Wendy, my dear. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. And you found the records. What you're seeing is true. For the last 8 years, Cole has been systematically draining my savings. He'd show up with a story, a business opportunity, a tax bill, a threat of bankruptcy. He made me feel it was my duty to help, that family sticks together. Her voice cracked. Once, 2 years ago, he brought me papers to sign, said they were insurance forms. They were a loan against my house. I was so ashamed, I never told anyone. I didn't want to break the family. But I can't let him do this to the estate, to what I want to leave for you and others. I hugged my knees, tears streaming down my face. My phone buzzed. It was Arthur. Wendy, he said urgently. We may have a problem. Cole knows you went to the storage facility. He's asking questions. 2 days later, Cole called a family meeting at his house. He said it was to get everyone on the same page. I knew it was a trap, but Arthur advised I go. He couldn't attend, but told me to listen, not react. The living room was packed with aunts, uncles, cousins. Cole stood by the fireplace, the picture of a responsible eldest son. Now that the emotional time has passed, he began, we need to discuss Aunt Clara's affairs practically. There are assets to manage. As the most experienced in business, I'm willing to take the lead. He then looked directly at me. But it seems Wendy has been digging around privately. Consulting lawyers, going through private papers. It feels like she's looking for money, trying to cut the family out before the will is even read. Eyes turned to me, suspicious. I kept my mouth shut, holding on to Aunt Clara's words. Cole smiled, a cold, calculated look. Because once the full estate is revealed, he said slowly, you'll all see who she really trusted in the end. The formal reading of the will was held in Arthur Vance's office. The family filled the room, buzzing with nervous expectation. Cole sat in the front, confident. Arthur began reading the legal language. Small, sentimental bequests were made to friends and charities. Then he reached the core of the document. I give, devise, and bequeath the entirety of my residuary estate, including all real property, financial assets, and decision-making authority regarding my legacy, to my niece, Wendy Grace Henderson. He continued, detailing that Wendy was to be the sole executor, with full discretion to enact a separate legacy plan document. The room erupted into noise. What? All of it? Cole shot to his feet, his chair screeching. This is outrageous. She must have coerced her. Aunt Clara was confused in her final days. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You manipulated her. Arthur Vance didn't raise his voice. He simply clicked a button on his laptop. A video window opened on a large screen. There was Aunt Clara, sitting in this very office, looking thin but alert. Arthur's voice from behind the camera asked, Clara, can you confirm your wishes? She looked straight into the camera, her eyes sharp. I, Clara Henderson, am of sound mind. I leave my entire estate to my niece, Wendy. I appoint her as my executor. My brother's son, Cole, is not to be involved in any decisions. He has taken enough. The video ended. The room was utterly silent. Cole's face was a mask of pale shock. All his bluster drained away, replaced by a dawning horror. I felt a surge of grief for my aunt, mixed with fierce protectiveness. As the family began to murmur again, I turned to Arthur, overwhelmed. "What now?" I whispered. "What am I supposed to do with all this?" In the days that followed, I was torn. The evidence of Cole's exploitation was devastating. Part of me wanted to expose him to the whole family, to scream his betrayal from the rooftops. Another part, the part that remembered Aunt Clara's pain and her desire to avoid scandal, hesitated. What would justice even look like? I spent hours in the storage unit, sorting through the legacy plan Arthur gave me. It outlined donations, a scholarship fund, the preservation of her cottage. It was beautiful and thoughtful. But the shadow of Cole's actions darkened it all. "He stole from her," I said to Arthur during a meeting. "He lied and pressured her. Doesn't the family deserve to know?" Arthur steepled his fingers. "Your aunt's primary wish was for you to steward her legacy wisely. The question is, what serves that best? Revenge or resolution?" As I packed up that evening, I pulled a worn novel from a box of her favorites. A sealed envelope, hidden between the pages, fluttered to the floor. The envelope contained my aunt's final letter to me. "My dearest Wendy, by now you know everything. The ugliness and the weakness. I am so sorry to burden you with this. You have the purest heart in the family. So my last request is this: do not destroy him. That is not who you are. Instead, hold him accountable. Make him face what he has done. Use the authority I've given you to draw a line, not to start a war. True strength is in stopping the cycle, not continuing it." I cried reading it, but my path became clear. Revenge was off the table. But accountability was essential. I would follow the legacy plan transparently. And I would ensure Cole could not touch another penny. As I began cross-referencing the estate's asset list with the records in storage, I found something odd. Several recent transactions didn't match Aunt Clara's meticulous logs. I brought the discrepancies to Arthur. His face grew serious as he reviewed the files. "These are asset transfer requests," he said, pointing to digital logs dated after Aunt Clara's funeral. One was for the sale of a stock portfolio. Another was a request to liquidate a bond fund. Both had been initiated but flagged by the bank because the official death certificate had already been filed. Someone tried to move these assets after her death, before the will was legally enacted, Arthur said quietly. They used old authorization codes, likely ones your aunt had given them for emergencies years ago. There was only one person who would have those codes and the audacity to try it. Cole. He hadn't stopped. Even after her death, he was trying to raid her accounts, assuming no one was watching closely yet. I asked Arthur to call a small, formal meeting with Cole, his wife Angela, and two of our older, respected uncles. We met again at his office. Cole arrived, defensive and scowling. "What's this about, Wendy? Trying to flex your new power?" I placed copies of the transfer attempts on the table. "Can you explain these, Cole?" Dated last week. He glanced at them, and a flicker of panic crossed his face before he masked it. "Those? Aunt Clara and I discussed rebalancing her investments before she died. The bank must have been slow. The bank rejected them because the owner was deceased," Arthur stated calmly. "The attempts were made after her passing." Cole's wife stared at him, her mouth agape. One of our uncles shook his head in disappointment. Cole spluttered, "This is a mistake." "Maybe her financial advisor," Arthur cut him off. "The requests originated from your home IP address, Cole. We've already had the transactions permanently reversed and the accounts secured." After the uncles left, shaking their heads, Cole's bravado collapsed. It was just him, me, and Arthur in the room. The color drained from his face. Wendy, please, he begged, his voice cracking. You can't take this to the police. It would ruin me. My business, it's hanging by a thread. I was desperate. I just needed to cover a debt to keep the doors open. I felt a painful mix of anger and pity. You were desperate 8 years ago when you started? You were desperate when you forged her signature? He had no answer, just put his head in his hands. I will not press criminal charges, I said, my heart hammering. For Aunt Clara's sake, and for the family's peace. But you will repay every cent you took from her, with a formal repayment plan drafted by Arthur. And you will have no further involvement with the estate. Cole looked up, a spark of his old arrogance returning. A repayment plan? You want me to pay back money my own aunt gave me? That's insane. I won't agree to that. He stood up, straightening his jacket. You think you've won? We'll see about that. He stormed out. His refusal meant the softer path was closed. I focused on my duty. With Arthur's help, I began executing Aunt Clara's legacy plan. We established the caregiver scholarship in her name. We arranged for her beloved cottage to be maintained and used by a local women's respite charity. The family, seeing my genuine efforts to honor her, began to warm to me. They offered help and shared their own fond memories. During one of these conversations, an uncle mentioned offhandedly, she was so worried about that silly corporate mess near the end. What corporate mess? I asked. The uncle shrugged. Something about one of Cole's old ventures, Henderson Holdings. She'd signed as a guarantor years back, I think. She muttered about it last Christmas, said she hoped it wouldn't cause trouble. A cold dread washed over me. Arthur and I dove back into the files. Buried deep in a folder of old business documents, we found it. A personal guarantee signed by Aunt Clara, tying a portion of her assets as collateral for debts of Henderson Holdings LLC. The company was now defunct and drowning in liabilities. Cole had never disclosed this. If the creditors came calling, they could have legitimately claimed a huge chunk of the estate. He knew, Arthur said grimly. He nearly ruined everything. This guarantee could have swallowed the entire legacy if called in. To formally sever the estate from this liability and finalize my authority, Arthur filed the necessary petitions with the probate court. A hearing was scheduled. Cole, true to his word, fought back. He hired an aggressive lawyer who filed objections, claiming undue influence and challenging my fitness as executor. The morning of the hearing was tense. In the courtroom hallway, Cole's lawyer, a man with a loud voice and sharp suit, tried to intimidate me. This will get messy, Miss Henderson. You should consider a settlement that includes your brother. Arthur simply adjusted his cufflinks and said, in a voice so quiet only we could hear, your client should tread very, very carefully. When the hearing began, Cole's lawyer made grand claims about my inexperience and my aunt's fragile state. Then it was our turn. Arthur stood calmly. Your Honor, if I may, the issue is not Miss Henderson's capability, but Mr. Henderson's conduct. He began submitting evidence into the record. The financial record showing the years of draining loans. The forged signature on the property loan document. The audio recording of Aunt Clara's confession. The post-death transfer attempts. And finally, the hidden personal guarantee for Henderson Holdings. He presented each item clearly, without drama. The judge's expression grew sterner with each piece. Cole sank lower in his seat, avoiding everyone's gaze. The courtroom was dead silent when Arthur finished. Cole's lawyer asked for a brief recess. Outside, in the stark hallway, Cole finally broke. All his anger evaporated, replaced by sheer, shaking panic. He grabbed his lawyer's arm. Stop. Just stop. He turned to me, his eyes red-rimmed. Wendy, I'm sorry. Okay? I'm so sorry. I was in over my head for years. I kept taking from her to patch holes, to look successful, to keep up appearances. I genuinely thought I deserved it more. That I was the successful one, so her money should come to me to manage, to use. I thought you were just drifting. He was crying now, messy and real. I buried myself. The raw admission sucked the anger right out of me, leaving only a deep, weary sadness. I looked at the broken man before me, my brother. Cole, I said, my voice firm. This ends today. One way or another. Back in the courtroom, the judge rendered his decisions. Based on the evidence, he dismissed all of Cole's objections. He granted me full and permanent authority over Clara Henderson's estate. Regarding Cole's actions, the judge ordered a clean, legal consequence. He was to formally repay the documented loans to the estate on a strict, court-monitored schedule. The hidden personal guarantee was to be legally voided, with Cole bearing any resulting costs from creditors. He was also barred from any financial dealings with other elderly relatives without court approval. It was a financial and reputational ruin, but it avoided prison. Justice was served, not with vengeance, but with the cold, precise weight of the law. In the weeks that followed, the family dynamic shifted. Relatives who had been cool to me called to apologize. We always saw how Cole treated her, how he acted entitled, one cousin confessed. But he was so loud, so convincing. We're sorry we didn't speak up. I accepted their apologies but quietly set new boundaries. I would not engage in gossip about Cole. I would focus on the positive legacy. The estate work became fulfilling, a way to stay connected to my aunt's generous spirit. When the final paperwork was signed and the assets were fully distributed according to her plan, Arthur handed me one last, thin package. She left this with me separately, he said. For when it was all over. At home, I opened the package. It was my aunt's personal diary, covering the last 5 years. I read it slowly, tears blurring the pages. Entry after entry mentioned my visits. Wendy brought soup today, just to chat. Never asked for a thing. Wendy fixed my garden gate. She notices what needs doing. Cole came by. Left with a check again. I feel so tired after he leaves. Wendy calls it an energy vampire. She's right. The entries painted a clear picture. Where Cole saw a resource to exploit, I had seen a person to love. Her words healed a wound I hadn't fully acknowledged. On the very last page, the entry was dated the week before she passed. Her handwriting was shaky but determined. It read, "My legacy is safe. I see now, so clearly, you were always the one in charge of what really matters." With the estate settled, I used a portion of the inheritance to fully fund the Clara Henderson Foundation for Family Caregivers, providing grants and support. It was work that felt meaningful, a direct extension of my aunt's kindness and my own values. I was no longer the drifting, dismissed sister. I was the anchor, the steward, the one who had protected our family's story from being rewritten by greed. I had a purpose and a quiet confidence I'd never known before. One afternoon, as I was leaving the foundation's new office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Cole. "Can we talk? Just you and me. One last time." We met at a neutral coffee shop. Cole looked older, subdued. The bluster was completely gone. "I meant my apology," he started, his voice low. "I was wrong about you. About everything. I'm trying to make the repayments. It's hard, but I'm doing it." I nodded. "I know you are. I'm sorry for what I said at the gathering. It was cruel. You were never a waste of space." I accepted his apology. The anger was gone, leaving only clarity. "Thank you, Cole. I accept your apology. But things can't go back to how they were. We'll be civil at family events. But there will be no loans, no business talks, no secrets. That chapter is closed." He nodded, a flash of regret in his eyes, but also acceptance. We parted with a stiff nod, not a hug. It was enough. Walking out into the afternoon sun, I felt light. The battle was over. I had honored my aunt, protected her legacy, and reclaimed my own worth on my own terms. Justice had been served, not with a shout, but with a steady, satisfying click of a lock finally securing what was always meant to be safe.